Good evening. You are listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight from Great Midwest, I have RDV on the sat line here. Of course, I am broadcasting to you from the Xtreme Studios in the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. Ed, HCTR, Commanders won. They got kind of lucky, but 6.5 is the over-under for their wins. I'll take the over on that, but I was going to go under 9, but that's another side discussion. Obviously, we're talking about a Mel Gibson movie called Payback from 1999 that also has Lucy Liu in it and a bunch of other really good characters. And RDV, I hadn't watched this since it was in the theater, and it had come to my attention after rewatching it. I enjoyed it. There's a lot of things I like about it. Love Mel Gibson. Will watch anything with him in it.
Yep.
But you had just asked me recently, hey, did you watch this cut or the director's cut? So when I did a deep dive and went, wow, there's something that appears to be totally different than that. But let's just take a minute to talk about the movie itself and what's going on. Then we'll talk about the differences that a director's cut can make too. But for you, was this a first watch?
This is a second watch. Well, okay. First watch with the director's cut. I've seen the movie in theaters too when it came out in 1999. Yeah. Very fun movie. Okay. This time was more fun. The first time I watched it, I felt it was a little too much. Okay, kind of like it's just not enough. It was, too many explosions. It wasn't like straight to the point. And like I said, I watched the director's cut, and holy crap! By cutting it by 10 minutes, getting rid of some of the needless scenes, it's smooth. It's like that. You find that the nice vodka, get that perfect balance, and just go down, and then you can just. That's how basically I like the director's cut, man.
The movie's about basically this guy named Porter. It's based off a book from like maybe 30, 40 years ago.
Revenge story.
Yeah, it's just a revenge thriller. It's got this neo-noir type vibe to it because they shoot with the really what I call it's an ugly looking movie to me because they have that bluish brownish tinge to it and all, and I didn't like that, to be honest with you.
I think the Bone Collector had that too, didn't it?
Something like that did. Yeah,
it's the late 90s. Remember the posters were always orange and blue.
Yeah, and digital. So the idea is that this guy starts off and he's shot. And he's in one of those underground clinics where some disgusting fat dude with whiskey is pulling the bullets out, and so after 5 months he decides he's going to go get revenge. And the thing I always liked was kind of cynical about it was he said, I know how much my life is worth, and it's $70,000 exactly.
Yeah.
And so they when you watch the theatrical cut, which is most of the versions you're going to see out there, it is a little bit longer. It is a bit more slow and deliberate. I certainly don't have a problem with it. I'm curious about the director's cut because I can see where they could chop out some stuff and it would be faster.
I can tell you right now, what you just mentioned was cut out.
Really?
Yeah. It starts off with him just walking on the bridge, stuff, talking about it, and then he goes to his wife's place, tries to clean her up, and she ODs.
Yes.
And then he has kind of a flashback, to like everything when he's showering, you see the wounds on his back, and he remembers, the deal where he gets screwed over by Val.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
his buddy screws him over. Yeah. And Val does the number on him too. So let me ask you this. If I go back to the early 80s, one of the first movies that I saw that had voiceover work that's had supposedly a lot of different endings that people argue about and also versions would be Blade Runner.
Yes,
I personally like voiceover work. Was voiceover work cut out in the director's cut?
In the very beginning, we had the voiceover, but later in the movie, there was no other voiceover stuff.
Really? I liked it here and there, and I like hearing Mel Gibson.
I do in certain things, like we talk about voiceover work and all. There's they have it in comic books too. Which is, I don't know what it is, but that was in the Frank Miller Batman Year One. He had James Gordon was doing the voice over for it, and then he got Long Halloween was all Batman. It's like, and then when you see it in live action form, it's just like it doesn't really fit as much, In the comic book form, I kind of like it more. Blade Runner is the really only movie I really know that does the voiceover for narration, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's too much. I kind of liked having it cut out in the movie because it becomes like a totally different movie without the narration, the voiceover.
Yes, apparently the producers of the film and then the director itself, they had a squabble about the length of the film and all that. Obviously, if it's shorter, you might be able to squeeze in an extra viewing, all these types of things. But it's interesting because I don't know specifics of who had the final creative say in it. And a similar thing is going on with, of
Mhm.
course, them trying to recast James Bond, not only the actor, but who's going to direct it. And right now, Christopher Nolan's up there and everybody's got an orgasm
Yeah.
about it,
Yep.
which it gets a little bit drony to me a bit, but he still would probably make a great looking James Bond film, but he wants total creative control, and Barbara
Mhm.
Broccoli doesn't want to give it up. And something like Payback, where it's just a dime store kind of cop thriller sort of thing, if you want to look at it like that,
Yeah.
that's all it has to be. So it's surprising to me that, again, you're absolutely right. You take out 10, 15 minutes of something, cut it a little differently, maybe score it slightly different, totally different film.
So you brought up mentioned in the chat right there. You mentioned right there, like he goes, he kind of cynical, he gets the gut work, and then he goes robs the bum. Well, yeah,
I love
this
that.
I love this.
That hooks it for me.
He robs a bum, goes to the diner, and then steals her cigarettes, and then he sees the guy on the street. He steals that guy's wallet.
Yep.
And then he gets himself a suit, and then he's like, when the card finally gets declined at the steak dinner, he runs out.
I love it.
And literally, I love that whole entire thing. It's like, okay, like, and then this is all before you even learn about that he was in a heist, all stuff. I'm like, hey, like it's Mel Gibson being a pickpocket, and just, and like I said, it fits. Like I said, it's I think it's a lot better without having the gut, you can be shot and be patched up and the recuperation. Like, just to get into that, he kind of narrates it, he talks about the 70,000, and they're like, okay, what's going on? And then you get clued in by the flashback, and then like his wife ODs, and then you get like this movie goes on. You learn he runs into dirty cops, and like it's a wholly different different movie. The one thing I gotta ask you though, because there's the Lucy Liu scene with Val.
This is the movie I fell in love with Lucy Liu.
Because
I love her because of this film.
Lucy Liu was with Val in this, and I think they might have cut that. Was she in a strip bar at all, dancing on a pole, or is that I'm thinking of a different movie? So I remember Lucy Liu did something like that too, but I don't know.
Marissa Tomei did in The Wrestler.
Okay, so I'm thinking of a different movie. Okay, but Lucy Liu, basically, you're seeing here. She comes in, he's on the phone, and he's talking. He's got because this guy, Arthur guy, he's the cabbie guy. And he's like, this guy's looking for you. It's like, it's like, what? And then she's basically like abusing him because he's kind of like, he's a sadist. He likes having women beat him up, which is really weird. Whatever.
It's
anyway.
And it exists. And the point for that being in the movie is because we find out that he's the one that beat the shit out of his girlfriend, high-end call girl that he used to drive for.
Yeah, Maribel. Who is, I forget, going back to the 90s, I forget, like, holy shit, that's right, she was around too. It's like, and like thinking, man, like, wow, I mean, this is the late 90s movies, I still appreciate some of the actresses that you don't see anymore, because it just feels like, it's just like, well, it's movies today, it's Harry Styles or the kid from High School Musical. I don't give a shit about those characters.
Right.
I mean, the heavy hitters like Mel Gibson, not really around, where you see the heavy hitters now, they're in the Grandpa movie, Expendables 4.
It's true.
It's so sad.
The thing here with Lucy Liu is that she was in, I forget, one of those girl shows there in the late 90s.
Oh, Charlie's Angels.
No, that was a movie. There was a TV show she was in. I forget it. It was one that chicks used to watch back in the late 90s.
Charmed?
No, it wasn't supernatural show. It was like a Girls in New York kind of shit thing.
Sex in the City?
No, not that. Something else. Whatever.
Mulholland. I can't think of it. There's so many.
It's not important, but for me, she was like a B-level person, actress that.
Yeah.
In this movie, she looks incredible. She just has this
the dominatrix kind of like that crazy, she does, right?
But she's got that crazy kind of chick vibe in here.
Like Jackie Jansen.
Well, the movie, the long version, almost seems like it's got some humor in a few scenes, and one where she's beating the shit out of the guy. It's like, okay, and then he goes to beat up on her, and Mel kind of doesn't want her to do it, and he extracts his information because you don't fuck with Mel in this movie, bottom line, and he's patient about it. And then she's getting, you see her when he's beating the shit out of him in the bed, she's getting turned on, aroused, and she's like tweaking his nipple, and she's got the crop.
Yeah.
And then when he goes to leave, she's like, I have a few more minutes.
A few more minutes, and he's like, nah. And then when you come across her again, because you learn that she's actually with the gang he ripped off. The original heist ripped off 50,000 or 130,000 it was.
Yeah.
From the triads, whatever, and the Chinese gang, and so you learn that later in the movie that she's working with them, and he basically through Maria Bello, because she works for the syndicate, he's like, hey, I need to get because that's where his 70 grand went to. went to so the Val could be joined this syndicate, and it was just led by the guy who's always in those commercials for gold. I forget what his name is, the actor, but
Not Kris Kristofferson.
no, the main guy. He goes to first and whacks the big guy. There's Fredericks and the other one.
Not Bill Duke.
No, those are the cops.
Right.
I'm talking about the guy at the top, the guy in charge of the syndicate. So anyway, so I love the fact that you see Lucy Liu shows up later with after he basically told Val, he's like, hey, basically beat him up in his hotel, said, here, I want my money tomorrow by 70 grand, and I want to buy the place payphone here, and so you have till this time. So when he goes to show up there, the triads come up, pretty much run him over with the car, the SUV Escalade. Everybody has Escalades, because that's because
I know, it's awesome.
it's like that. Now I gotta ask, Escalade, was that a 90s thing or was that started in the 80s?
So here's the thing with a Cadillac. If you've never been, I don't know how they are today. I was in a Cadillac SUV and it was still a decent ride.
Yeah.
Cadillacs, I don't care what car you might have driven back in the 70s or 80s. A Cadillac was a smooth ass ride. And I had tons of sports cars, but the best rides I've ever been in, smooth and just sexy and fun, are Cadillacs. Cadillacs, there's just no comparison to me. I mean, yeah, you want to go fast if you want to, whatever, but Cadillacs they're just sexy. We don't have sexy cars anymore, but Cadillacs, you could get a Cadillac and it was a sweet, sweet ride.
Okay. Anyway, so basically, the scene is basically he gets the he's gonna walk over, he's gonna get his money, and he's expecting Val to be there. He gets from behind, they run him. You see him smash right into his back, right into the windshield. It shatters. And he's rolled down, and they say like they're kicking the crap out of him. You see the famous basically pan ram when he's looked from his point, the ground, the camera's pointed up. You see all the guys standing around. And like I always love that, like because you don't see that much anymore. But anyway, they bring him on. They're gonna like basically like he's on the hood. They're gonna like get him. The cops show up. Val's pissed, but later, later in the movie, we get to see this triad again too, and I love it because he's basically like the whole shootout with them, he
baits him.
He baits him. I love it.
Yeah.
And then she's in there, and I love the whole thing. It's like basically they show up, they're gonna shoot him, but he's in the cabbies of thing. And he uses the Arthur Morgan, whatever it is, as a shield. Those guys get killed.
It's so stupid.
So he jumps out, it rolls out, and then he goes over with two guns, shoots the back out of the Escalade or the Cadillac, whatever, and then they try to run him over into this cargo pile. He drops down, and they're like, "Where is he?" He's under the ground. He starts shooting up from the floor. I love this.
Lucy's in there. And he runs out of bullets, and she does too. And it's like they're ripping each other's clothes off or whatever. She's so hot and turned on by it.
And she's like, "Wait," because she's really turned on. Because unlike Val, he's not a pussy. And so yes, I love stuff like that. I mean, the cops were gonna basically frame him for the murder of his wife who OD'd, and like say like, unless you get us $130,000. He's like, I only want $70,000 throughout this movie. He's like, he tells Mrs. Bronson she's ahead everything, and I love. He's like, I just want $70,000. And you're like, $130,000? No. Everyone keeps thinking that. I was like, because they're like, why would you only want $70,000? The guy's like, because like I think Kris Kristofferson was the guy, the second one.
No, he's the main guy. William Dafoe. It was the main guy who was really he was good in it, and he was the composed guy who we shot.
Is he the one they had the guy with the two suitcases?
No, that's Kris Kristofferson. He's the final boss.
Because
right out of Blade from the year before.
All right, because Kris Kristofferson, unless he's the guy with the two goons, tells him to hold up the guns. Or hold up.
No, that's Kris Kristofferson. Yes.
Oh, okay. Because otherwise, it looks like I didn't recognize him. But yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of humor in this, and as I said, this whole movie when they get the I don't know how it was in the theatrical cut. In the director's cut, there was little humor, and it was kind of like situational humor, but it was mostly just Mel Gibson being a badass. And then I said like towards the end, after he gets his money from the train stuff, it's kind of like he sees his life flashing back. It's pretty like it started out for 70 grand, he gets shot, and at the end he gets shot. And it was kind of like a satirical, like a play on his life. It's like he's basically saying he should have went for the money, because even he remembers like how the girl basically helping Rosie. She's like, how hard of a guy are you? Like, I know you're tough, but like going up against the syndicate, you're insane. You don't need the money. And so I love like the kind of like there's kind of the whole thing. It's like maybe he just could have left, but he couldn't let the Cindy Crane go. Did all this stuff. He got the cops in trouble, the ones who were blackmailing him by planting the gun. Had the guy, here, can you hold this my piece for me?
Yeah.
Because I need to go in because they're gonna frisk me. And then he grabs it back with the newspaper and like these cops are kind of not that smart. But I do like the fact that they had that kind of in there. The show's it kept with the theme from the very beginning. We're told that he's witty, he's kind of crafty, he's good at pulling bank jobs.
Yeah.
And I love even the top lady, Miss Bronson. She's the head. You never see her, but you hear in the voice, and she's always on speaker. He's like, put her on speakerphone because he doesn't want to touch the phone whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what is it. Is it a germ phone, or he doesn't trust the guys? Maybe he got hit whack with the phone, and I love it. He just keeps telling her, he's like, I killed your last guy. It's like, and she's like, well, no. She's like, 100, she basically, I love how he's basically just like, he ends up, because the guy drops the suitcase, he keeps his word, shoots the suitcase, and then she's like, oh my god, are you still? He's like, no, he's just destroying my alligator like price bags. Like there's subtle humor, but it just keeps Mel Gibson looking like a badass, which I miss because it's one of the reasons I don't like watching some of these older movies. It's kind of like it doesn't like Expendables. I mean, some people love that stupid humor action. But this was Mel Gibson, like I think one of his better movies. I liked him in Lethal Weapon, but I like this.
Well, what I think you're reacting to, and I'm going to take a step back from this film here because I do think it's an underappreciated gem. It did okay at the box office.
Mm-hmm.
Mel Gibson's probably one of his greatest movies he's been in was one that nobody talks about because Anthony Hopkins is in it and overshadows him. It's called The Bounty from '84. Calliope was another one that people loved a lot, but they wanted the sexy, cute, young star kind of thing. And as a kid, we know her from like Mad Max and The Road Warrior being a badass. But even the third one, Thunderdome, is kind of just an '80s-fied version, Americanized version of it. I know Ed Chat was talking about how he's worked really hard on his accent, and that's a really good point because he does have a heavy Australian drawl to it that he's gotten better at over the years. But to me, it kind of makes me think back of like John Huston movies. We've reviewed a couple of those. Chinatown's considered one of the greatest movies ever made, and we've done a few others. And what I liked about like ones that we've talked about doing with Humphrey Bogart here in the future, the Philip Marlowe ones or whatever, Sam Spade, different types of detectives in the '40s, is there's always an element of cynicism with the world to it, and they're not afraid to basically talk about how there's dark shit going on with drugs and pornography and those types of things, and we kind of forget here because it's glossed over that the woman that he was hired to drive around and protect is a super high-end escort, call girl, hooker, whatever the hell you want to call it. It doesn't matter. And she can seem sweet on the surface and this and that, but I mean, let's just be honest. She's the same category as the people walking the streets, just in a different situation. That's all. She's got a different kind of pimp. And so I love when detective movies dive into stuff like this with people and secrets, because there's always what's on the surface that people see, and then there's the reality of what's going on, and the discovery of all these things underneath is kind of cool. And Mel Gibson is one of the few guys that, to me, even in current day, even though this movie's 25 years old, I could see him as a hard-boiled detective, and that's it. And I remember we've talked a little bit about we talked about Frailty, the great Bill Paxton movie, right?
Yeah.
But the cop that's in there, Powers Booth, he's a Texan. He's another guy that played Philip Marlowe in the HBO TV series in like '83, '84, and he captured it pretty well. That was a little bit more of a glossy thing. But you're absolutely 100% right. You need to have a heavyweight person that's taking it like this, and it's just a part of who they are. And this movie is a perfect vehicle for Mel Gibson, and his combination of those great eyes, looking stern-faced, and
it's
a
New
little
York
physicality to it. Yeah, this just is a perfect role for him.
Well, also just like the one click, it's New York before everybody had a cell phone. People had the flip phones. Nobody had the smartphones, recording all this stuff. None of this BS. Like the shootout with the after he killed somebody, it's like you think it like someone would call the cops, but in New York, it's kind of like well, it is now today. It's becoming more, where the cops' response call times is getting longer and longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I love the fact that Mel Gibson was kind of like he was a heavy. He didn't say much words in the director's cut. I'm not sure it was in the theatrical cut because they cut so much out. But he's a man of few words. Went there, his witty, situation humor. Him getting hit by thing, getting by the car, and he's saved by the cops. And then he's like, oh crap, now I got to deal with the cops now because these dirty cops want money. He's like, I only want 30 grand. They're like 130 grand. He's like, okay. And they keep telling me, he's like, I love the fact that he went in those movies where he just goes up to the guy and is like, just shoots him, kills him. He's like, hey, next person, He's like, no bullshit. Yeah, I miss that from movies. And I was kind of thinking, like, if they did a reboot of this, it'd be modernized more. I don't want that. I hope they would keep it with just the flip phone stuff, like it was like it was in the 90s. Keep it like that. And I would say, I guess the person they'd probably cast for this would be Jason Statham. And if Jason
Statham,
he's a
little too cute right now, you know what I mean?
But only if Jason. I would say if you're gonna have Jason Statham do a reboot of this, make it where he's not talking so much. Keep it where it's like Mel Gibson has very little dialogue. None of this where he takes his shirt off. Bullshit. I don't want the mechanic.
Mel Gibson used to show his ass a lot in films, and I have no problem with that. You got to give some kind of candy out there. You know?
This was just mainly just he wasn't supposed to be a pretty boy. He was basically like
a thug.
Yeah, thug.
Yeah.
And like I said, he just wanted his money. He didn't give a shit about anything else. And I could see Jason Statham playing a character like this. I just want my fucking money. I just want to leave 30 grand, and and then shit after shit piling up. And that's like kind of like these movies like that. There's always you got it all planned out, and then something goes on, and then even this he shows at the end in the theatrical cut because he's a guy who always plans things. He's the main guy. Val was was the guy who was the worm, where the main brains was always Porter. Porter is the guy who people are like, who's Porter? We never heard of this guy, because that's how good he is,
Yeah.
And as I said, I miss kind of movies like this. It's kind of like we talk about we saw John Wick. He's the guy you don't want to mess around with, But this is short and sweet. Like I said, I do recommend if you're gonna watch this, watch it 2006. It's called Payback Straight Up, because it's pretty much just straight to the point. And I appreciate that, and I wish more movies were like this, A to B. You don't need to put a lot of cutesy stuff. You don't need to hold the audience's hands by adding all these explosions, a little more humor and stuff. No, I just want straight to the point, because I like Mel Gibson when he was playing in Breaks and Lethal Weapon, but I don't need that in every single movie with this. And so I forgot who it was. I think it was Ed that wanted us to do this, I think. And I was like, oh man, because I remember this movie. I was like, oh, this is the one. It's like, oh. So I'm so glad that I watched the 2006 cut. So it cut out.
And I'm glad you did too, because like I say, I didn't know about it. And Ed's mentioned, of course, Lee Marvin was the main guy at the end that had the alligator suits, and he was a legitimate badass guy back in the day. I think he has a Bruce Lee connection and all that. William Dafoe was the first guy, and then it was Kristofferson, and then it was him. So we got an extra boss level in here.
Yeah,
Lee Marvin's. And he didn't even sweat in this movie. This is collecting a check easy for him.
It's bringing up when Val shot the dog. It's like I love the fact that Porter comes back and he's like, well, I just forgot my smokes. He didn't hear her.
Exactly. I love that.
Okay. And he goes up and he shoots him in the arm, and then he's like, oh, the piece right there, shoots him in the leg, and he's like, and he just says like, well, is your name on the lease? No. It's like, okay, just grab your shit you need and get out of here. But before that though, what was it? Porter is like was talking. He's like, while Val's laying on the ground, he's like, puts cigarette in his mouth. He's like, you got a light? And he's like, well, no, I don't. Then what are you good for? Puts a pillow up, shoots him in the head, and just kind of like no remorse. And I love how he's like, hey, Rosie, pay attention. None of this bullshit. He's like, grab your shit, let's get out of here. He said
they took the dog too. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah, the dog. Yeah, did they take the dog? Was I don't know if the dog died. I don't know if the dog.
Well, I don't know about the director's cut, but in the theatrical, I believe the dog lived and they took it with them.
Oh, in the director's cut, the dog gets shot, and you're, and that's all you don't see the dog rest. So, it's up to you. It leaves up to you what's going on, but you don't see the dog later in the movie though with her in the car. But yeah, that's the other thing too. That I was more sad for the muscle car they killed or destroyed in the beginning of the head-on collision in
I
the
know.
flashback than it was for the dog.
I know.
I was like, that's a sweet ride, man. But wait, here's another one. And then you find out he has another one because this guy does. It's basically like a classic, like a Stephen King movie. That's what it felt like, with a little more hard edged, you know. Like what was it, The Getaway, or was it Bullets? One of the two. But either
Bullet's the
way,
big car
yeah,
chase one people
yeah.
think of.
But
Yeah,
Getaway is the one where he gets out of prison and he's going to do the heist again. You know, right? I believe so.
I
But
think so. Yeah.
we're going off topic here. This was an incredible movie, I guess. But only if you watch the director's cut. That's my opinion. I implore people to watch both, decide for yourself. But if you want to, watch the director's cut first, and then before you watch the other one, and you know, because it is 10 minutes less than the theatrical cut. But I've always been a person that's like when they first do these unrated movie cuts, you know, on the DVDs back in the 2000s. I always grab those first because I figure like, well, let's see what the MPAA didn't want me to watch. You know, I want to see what the director want his view, and I'm kind of glad that I watched the director cut of this because, like I said, I never really cared for the when I saw it in the theater. I remember walking out, I was like that was kind of a weird movie. Like okay, but it wasn't the point where it was awful. Whereas like I was sitting there like halfway through the movie, I was like, I just want this to end. I just remember like Lucy lives in there, and then he basically like his wife ODs, and they try to frame him for that. I was just like, I felt like this should have been like a video game at this point. But
Well, I mean, this is before.
uh,
Well, how do I say this? I said I've always thought Blade was one of
yeah,
the better movies that kind of came out when it comes to Marvel,
sure.
DC, that sort of thing, and it was mature and R-rated. And this movie comes out and it's mature and it's R-rated, but you're definitely seeing a lot of different movies kind of not come out like this anymore. So at the time,
Hmm.
it's like, okay, you just thought that more would come out, and they just don't seem to. And your point about them really not having any heavyweights do any of this stuff is, I think, absolutely true.
Yeah, and it
So
seems
it's
like
a shame because you're watching this at the time going, okay, it's Mel Gibson. We'll see more stuff like it, and you almost kind of don't.
no, because he did Get the Gringo and on some other movies. Of like, what the hell happened to your career, man? Is that I don't know if this is right around the time or right after this where he got in trouble with Hollywood, but they said he said something.
That would be still several years away.
Okay, okay, I was
It
curious,
was
but
after Passion of the Christ, which was
okay, okay,
2004, I
okay.
believe. Yeah, that was the big thing.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but
All right. Any other final thoughts? Anything you need to plug for tonight?
like I said, watch this. If you guys who are new here watching this on the replay, even subscribe, please subscribe. We're about like what 9 or 10 away from actually being reaching 1,000 here.
Yep.
Just share it out and let us know. If there's a movie you're watching that wants us to review, drop it in the comments down below. And yeah, we'll review it. You know, but please don't give us movies that you know are horrible and you want us to review. Like, don't torture us.
I don't know. It sounds kind of extreme. I do know that because some of the circles with your channel that you're onto is a little different. I've told some people on mine that if they're looking to have you, Pixel, myself, or some combination to come up there to have us give our interpretation of a particular movie, whether it's comic book based, which you guys handle most of, or the other
Yeah.
stuff that we handle, to let us know. Would be happy to go on another stream to promote our channel and give feedback and present ourselves to the world, because this is fun stuff talking about it. And since I hadn't seen this movie in the 24 years, it's 25 years it's been out,
I know
I
it's been
enjoyed
that
it.
long.
I know. Assault of the Killer Bimbos. Yeah, that's not a bad one. Oh, listen to Eric getting all fucking cute on that.
I'm waiting for Eric to be like, okay, now do all the ones he's like ones in the 40s, because then he's gonna want to jump on too.
Well, we do know that with the holidays coming up, we do try to select a little bit more of what we call the extreme classics, where we look at some of those. And I know that we only have so much
Yeah.
time that we put out there, so it is kind of a big thing. And I know we've done a few horror movies already earlier, particularly the Karnstein trilogy from Hammer Horror, the lesbian vampire ones with Professor Pixel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how ready he is for some of the more graphic Italian, Spanish types style horror, but I think I'm gonna swing one or two on him just so he gets a taste of it to warp his mind a little bit.
It's always
Um,
great when you're watching a horror movie, you know what they're saying, but you see the slasher and it's like, oh, okay. So you kind of got the plot without the language, the barrier, you know.
yeah, so I mean, it's going to be
Uh,
interesting, I think, coming up here in the holidays,
yeah.
because we just don't do all the friggin'
So
stupid stuff that comes out. We don't do any of that.
So Point Blank, I think we reviewed that with Pixel. I want to say so, like last year.
Point Break.
Yeah. Or sorry. Or okay, sorry. Point Break. Point Blank. Okay. So he put on. He meant. Okay. Do you mean Gross Point Blank, or you prefer to say Point Break? Because you have Point Blank in there. That's the John Cusack one. Or the Keanu Reeves. You got to be specific because, I mean, I don't hate either one of them, but we already reviewed one of them, and that was Point Break. And if you say the new one, you can go. Get out of here. Yeah, the only Point Break is the one with Jake Busey.
Jake Busey?
Yes. And I know it's Gary Busey, but like, once you've seen one Busey, they're all the same.
Eric's educating you, sir. Because again, this was a remake, and so he's pointing out that it was there is Carol O'Connor's in it. I'm looking it up right now. I did not realize that. And Angie Dickinson.
So I guess, like I said, I'd never heard of that movie, so I apologize if there actually is one called Point Blank. Because when I see Point Blank, it goes straight to John Cusack every time. I'm like, you forgot the gross point.
Angie Dickinson. That's a tough question. Angie Dickinson versus Lucy Liu. Oh my God, that's a tough one. Wow, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. You made me think about something.
Well, yeah, that is a tough one. We need a giant pool full of pudding, and we need to have them fight.
Oh, stop. All right, guys. So
tapioca. Nobody likes that shit.
I like it.
Butterscotch is better.
You've got a sweet tooth tonight. All right, there you go, guys. Payback, Mel Gibson, Lee Marvin, William Dafoe. I think that's him, whatever the fuck his name is, I forget, but he was a decent actor. I think they filmed a movie here in Central Florida in the 80s at Mount Dora, but I forget the name off the top of my head, but we'll probably review that one day when we're really bored. We're doing white trash movies or urban alternative films.
I think we should start doing some more Mel Gibson movies.
I don't disagree at all.
Yeah,
I love Mel Gibson.
That's not the one where his daughter gets killed. That was horrible.
No, we're going to go back to The Bounty or something older like that. Maybe the one with him and Kurt Russell and Tequila Sunrise. That's a good one too.
Right.
Especially since you haven't seen it, that's what always try to target ones we haven't
Tequila
seen.
Sunrise is Bruce Willis, wasn't it?
No.
I just remember it's just the one where I remember watching a little bit. It's been a while, but I remember his girlfriend betrays him, I guess. I can't remember. It's been such a long time.
Not being able to trust a woman. I'm shocked. How could they ever put that in a film? No, but I will say upcoming that we've already talked about and pretty much said we're going to be covering is on Apple TV around Thanksgiving or so. Kurt Russell and his son are going to be in a limited edition Godzilla TV series. I don't know if it's 6, 8, 10 episodes or whatever. It's with the same legendary company that made the current Godzilla films. However, the other main company, Toho in Japan, that does Godzillas, they have their own Godzilla film coming out. And I think it's set in the 50s or 60s. I'm not saying it's a reboot or might be a one-off, but I saw the trailer for the Kurt Russell one. I was like, man, this looks good. And I think I saw the trailer for the other one and said, man, we're going to get double Godzilla here in the fall. And it's not even the big Godzilla Kong kind of stuff that's going to be coming out. So we're definitely going to be covering that.
I think we should cover Burke's Law instead, Eric.
I just might have to throw some Umberto Eco films at you, like The Name of the Rose, but I think you kill yourself out of boredom while I enjoy it. So there's movies I can definitely torture you guys with, and that's the extreme part. You're welcome there, Ed, for the review. I believe it was you that suggested it. It is a nice little one. No, Mel Gibson's great. We'll do any Mel Gibson film.
Yeah. Well, except for The Passion. I already watched that once. We need to watch it again. Yeah, I know he said he hasn't seen the 2006 cuts. Look for that online. I actually couldn't. I went to go find it on Vudu to watch it, but it wasn't available. But they do recognize it as being, that it exists. I ended up finding it through an online website where you just click play.
Allegedly. Say it.
Allegedly, I watched it.
All right, guys. Have a good night. As always, stay extreme.
Don't do drugs, kids.